You're listening to the Sales Chameleon Podcast. Smarter sales, stronger growth, simplified.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Chameleon Podcast where selling smarter starts. I'm your host, Heather Coggins, and today we're going to be pulling back the curtain on one of the most powerful tools that you actually have access to in your sales toolkit already, whether you know it or not, and that's understanding social styles. Now, before you sit there and go thinking, oh no, not another personality test, don't worry, all right? I'm not going to be sitting here slapping labels on people or putting anyone in boxes. Instead, what I am going to do is start exploring the fascinating psychology and the behavioral science behind how people interact. So why do some people just seem to click right away while others just kind of make you feel like you're speaking two different languages, okay? And spoiler alert, it's all about behavior, perception, and adaptability. So let's go ahead and kind of start with some brain science and talk a little bit about the human brain in action. So we as humans are wired for connection, but we're also wired for survival. And so our brains are constantly interpreting all these signals from other people to really figure out, hey, is this person a friend or are they a foe? Can I trust them? Do they get me? Right? And all of this happens in milliseconds. And so that's why first impressions are really so powerful. They're going to be your brain's shortcut to really making sense of someone. And so the challenge is that these snap judgments are based on behavior, not intention. So when someone comes off as overly direct or maybe too reserved, we might end up misinterpreting their actions because we end up filtering their behavior through our lens, not theirs. But the thing is behavior is just the tip of the iceberg, okay? So you've probably heard the iceberg analogy. I think I've mentioned it before in a podcast, but the idea here is that the majority of what drives people, so their beliefs, their motivations, their fears, all of that is hidden beneath the surface and are things that we can't really see or hear. Now, what we do see tends to stay above the waterline, and that's their behavior. So the way they talk, their tone of voice, their facial expressions. But the thing is behavior isn't always an accurate reflection of what's actually going on below the surface. So someone might act distant because maybe they're just an analytical and they need that extra time to process, not because they're disinterested. Or maybe you have someone that tends to just dominate the conversation, right? That's not because they're being rude, they just probably are a driver. And so if we're only reacting to those things that are visible above the water, what we're doing is we're missing the bigger picture. And that's where those misunderstandings and those missed opportunities happen. And so why does this all matter in sales? Well, in sales and honestly in life, relationships are all about being built on trust and understanding. And so when you misinterpret someone's behavior, even if you do it unintentionally, it ends up creating that friction. And friction doesn't close deals and it doesn't build relationships, okay? And I don't know about you, but pretty much every single salesperson that I've come in contact with throughout my, life, they are all about winning, closing deals. And so it's just not in the cards to not be able to close those deals, okay? But as an example, if we kind of, get back to why this matters. Imagine you're pitching a product and, the person that you're pitching to, they're sitting across the table, they're very quiet, they're reserved, they're taking notes, and they're not even really making eye contact with you. If they are, it's very minimal. So you may be sitting over on the other side of the table thinking, oh great, I am just straight up losing them. They're not interested. But what if that's not the case at all, right? What if they're just processing? And what if they're processing because there's someone who values that data and really needs to analyze before they make a decision? Now, if we flip it, let's say you're talking to someone who's really excited, right? They're throwing out all these big ideas. They're bouncing around in their seat. You may think, hey, great, this is amazing. They are all in. But what if what they're doing is just brainstorming and they haven't even considered committing yet, right? You kind of said something that sparked a whole spiral of thoughts in their mind that's led them down a whole rabbit hole away from what you're even talking about. And so the point here is when we don't understand the why behind someone's behavior, we end up risking misaligning our approach. And in sales, misalignment means those missed opportunities, okay? And so when we look at the psychology of adaptability, this is where it kind of gets interesting, right? We all have kind of those natural tendencies in how we communicate, how we make decisions. And so we're not locked into one way of being. And so people adapt their behavior based on the situation, based on their environment, and even based on the person that they're talking. So, and if you really take time to kind of take a moment and think about it, you probably communicate differently with your boss than you're going to communicate with your best friend, right? You're probably also going to be a little bit more reserved in some of those high stakes meetings, but more outgoing in more of a casual networking event. And so the ability to adapt isn't just a skill, it's really more of a superpower. And it's one that you're able to develop fairly easily by just learning to recognize these behavioral patterns and really responding in a way that makes the other person feel understood. And so when we're able to do this, this is what's called versatility, okay? Is meeting people where they are, not where you want them to be. And so, when we kind of move a little bit forward into looking at the foundation for social styles and understanding what they are, at their core, they're really patterns of behavior that people are going to naturally display when they're interacting with other people. And so what these patterns do is they're going to give us clues about how they like to communicate, how they prefer to make decisions, and ultimately what they value in a conversation or in a relationship. And so the goal, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not to sit here and label people or even predict their every move. Okay, it's more so to really use these patterns as a guide to be able to better connect with these people, build that trust, and build those lasting relationships. And so as kind of a big takeaway, keep in mind, social styles aren't about changing who you are. It's not about trying to be someone you're not. It's not about being fake. It's about awareness. And when you are able to really understand someone's style, you can then adjust your approach to communicate in a way that feels natural to them, okay? What's important to the customer is what's important to the customer. And so once you understand that and you can adapt your approach, it's going to make things a whole lot smoother. And trust me, like I said, when people feel like you get them, that is when that magic happens, okay? That's when you start closing deals, you start strengthening those relationships, and you really start deepening those connections. And so to start kind of bringing this episode to a close, I want to go ahead and wrap up with some key takeaways. So remember, behavior is just the tip of the iceberg, so make sure you're not judging a book by its cover or even judging a person by their tone, okay? We need to make sure that we're understanding the why behind someone's behavior, because ultimately that's the key to better communication. And then remember, adaptability is not about being fake. It's not about being someone you're not. It's about being effective. And so as kind of an actionable item, something you can take away to start, practicing these skills is start paying attention to the behaviors of the people that you're interacting with, okay? What do you notice about their tone? What do you notice about their pace or even the way that they're framing questions? And then ask yourself, how might their behavior be reflecting some of those internal needs or motivations? Start observing, start asking those questions, and most importantly, stay curious. And that's going to go ahead and do it for today's episode of The Sales Chameleon. Again, remember, selling smarter starts with being able to understand, and understanding starts with curiosity. So if you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might be able to benefit. And until next time, stay versatile, stay curious, keep selling smarter, and I will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to The Sales Chameleon Podcast.